Alright, what's good guys? It's your boy KIDSTATIIC. I'm back for another reaction video. Today we're going to be reacting to the flight mic. Kevin Durant life is about to change. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. I'm going to actually let it play out, get my thoughts as it goes on, and then at the end I'll give my reaction. So let's get into it.
I actually thought they had a great chance to win the championship.
A few years ago, when Kevin Durant was traded to the Phoenix Suns, it was seen as unfair. Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and now Kevin Durant. Who was going to stop this team? But in 2025, everything changed. The Phoenix Suns were eliminated from play-in contention, and all signs were pointing towards KD getting traded. But why are the Phoenix Suns doing this? Is there any way that they can fix this? And how did the Suns end up in this predicament? But more importantly, what team will Kevin Durant be playing for next season? Before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications for the latest NBA news to your device. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. We've been making a lot of money using my brand new live pick sponsor. It will be traded to the Phoenix Suns in a midnight blockbuster at the trade deadline in 2023, most notably for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and 4 first-round picks. I said at the time of this trade that you may not believe it at the time, but the Brooklyn Nets were the biggest winners here because they now had the ability to rebuild their team for the foreseeable future, and this was a clear indicator that the Suns were all in on maximizing their short-term championship window. New Suns owner Matt Ishbia had made it clear that he wanted to bring a championship to Phoenix, and trading their future away for one of the best scorers in the NBA seemed like the perfect move. At the time, the thought of having Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul on the same team was insane. So insane that it almost made you forget the fact that the only reason KD left Brooklyn to begin with was because his old big three didn't work out. Surely that wouldn't happen again, right? It's not like we made videos saying that Kevin Durant is doing it again.
You pay a hefty price for that. You pay a hefty price for the best player in the league, but there's a downside risk here that is very big, and those Phoenix picks out in the distance could end up being very valuable for the Nets.
In 2023, the Phoenix Suns were eliminated in the second round by the eventual NBA champion Denver Nuggets. That offseason, they decided to trade Chris Paul in a package to get Bradley Beal, and also hired Frank Vogel to be their new head coach. And that would definitely change the outcome of the season, right? No, not necessarily. The Phoenix Suns would get eliminated in the first round, this time by the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that offseason, things had to change. And the Suns did do everything they could to rectify their issues. They once again fired their head coach, brought in another head coach that recently won an NBA championship the year after Frank Vogel did, in Mike Budenholzer. And they signed Tyus Jones, an underrated playmaker that has been a high-end role player that has typically come off of the bench throughout his entire career. But fast forward to 2025 and things have gotten way worse. It's clear the Bradley Beal trade was a horrific mistake. And while the Suns find themselves in a cap struggle, the Washington Wizards have Jordan Poole and a stack of picks. It's obvious that at this point, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker just can't play together. At least not on the current iteration of the Phoenix Suns. How do we know this? Because this season, Phoenix hired Mike Budenholzer to be the team's new head coach. That means that 3 separate head coaches have tried to coach Kevin Durant and Devin Booker together, and all 3 have failed. Plus, the Phoenix Suns failed to make it into the play-in tournament over the Dallas Mavericks, a team that's been memed over the past 2 months for trade.
And that's exactly what I was saying. Like, for all the trash that Dallas was getting, the fact that literally half of their roster is injured, and they still made the play-in over Phoenix. Phoenix was, like, hyped up, dude. I mean, like, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Beal is mediocre. We always knew that. He's, like, an overhyped role player, but I mean, the problem with the Suns is that they really have no depth. They don't. They traded all their depth for Kevin Durant, and that's what really sunk their ship.
Away their franchise superstar and has been suffering historic injuries. That's how bad the Phoenix Suns have been. So this means the Suns have only one choice and one choice only. They can't trade Bradley Beal, at least not yet. And even when they can trade Bradley Beal, they have no leverage at all. Once Bradley Beal's out the door, maybe there's some room for them to make some new changes, but I don't expect a crazy return for him, which means the Suns have no choice but to blow it up once again and trade Kevin Durant. This comes as no surprise because Kevin Durant is on an expiring contract and the situation in Phoenix has devolved. And to top it all off, we have evidence that the Suns were shopping Kevin Durant before the trade deadline.
What happens with the Suns this summer, Wendy?
Yeah, well, they're going to trade him, and he knows that.
The Suns reportedly had a deal in place to send Durant back to Golden State, but Durant said no because he didn't want to get traded in the middle of the season, which I obviously think is a bunch of baloney. He just didn't want to be Draymond Green's teammate again. I mean, I can't really blame him. KD left the Golden State Warriors originally to show that he could win without a super team. And what ended up happening? Well, the Golden State Warriors ended up reloading without him and made another run to the NBA Finals. And to reward the role players that got them there, Draymond Green punched the living crap out of Jordan Poole in training camp.
My only thing is I don't think he would go back with Golden State just because people say those 2 rings are illegitimate just because he was on Golden State. So nobody really counts that. They always give him a tough time, especially online. So I don't think he'll go back to Golden State. I mean, he could go Lakers, he could go Dallas. Who knows?
And since Kevin Durant didn't want to go there, they opted for Jimmy Butler instead. What this means is that KD only wants to be traded to a handful of teams, and apparently Golden State was not one of them. In fact, Shams breaks down perfectly which teams Durant may prefer.
Back at the NBA trade deadline, there were a list of teams that there was mutual interest with Kevin Durant and those teams. And that's Minnesota, that's New York, that's Houston, San Antonio, Miami.
From what Shams said, there are a handful of teams interested, but in reality, only a few of those teams can even afford KD. So what's going to happen from here? To start off, let's group the list of teams that want Durant. First, let's categorize the Houston Rockets and San Antonio Spurs as young, up-and-coming teams that might be one elite veteran away from a championship. In the case of Houston, they're the second-seeded team in the Western Conference, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can make noise in the playoffs with Draymond Green and Alperen Sengun. But if they get an early exit, I'd expect them to make a run at Kevin Durant. As for San Antonio, unfortunately, we won't get to see what the young core would have done in the playoffs. With De'Aaron Fox and Wemby out the rest of the season, we'll only get to see their potential next year. But by adding Kevin Durant, they might be adding the final piece that would take this team from up-and-coming to title contenders. The next tier of teams I want to point out are the desperate ones. The Minnesota Timberwolves and New York Knicks belong here because their experiments haven't been working out as planned, and they need to make a change quickly before more disappointment happens. I know Shams listed the Minnesota Timberwolves as a candidate for Kevin Durant, but really? We're talking about a team that broke up Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns for financial reasons. I just think if the Timberwolves make this move, they're making a panic trade for a big name because they couldn't quite live up to expectations this year. Obviously, it'd be cute because Anthony Edwards is on record saying that his favorite player is Kevin Durant.
Who I go to for advice? Of course, KD. That's my favorite player of all time.
I mean,
He also said that Kyrie was his favorite player of all time too, by the way.
Anthony Edwards was practically following KD around throughout the Olympics this past summer, and it was really adorable, but this just doesn't make sense for them to do. The same goes for the New York Knicks. The big four of Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Cat have been a fun team to watch, but they're not going to challenge Boston or Cleveland in the Eastern Conference. If anything, I think a KD trade makes more sense for New York than Minnesota, because on paper, at least they're more ready to contend right now. Plus, of the 4 players I mentioned, Mikal Bridges' contract expires first in 2026, and it would be funny to see him get traded back to the Phoenix Suns for KD. The third and final tier of team I want to talk about is the delusional tier, and this tier belongs solely to the Miami Heat, who, I'll be blunt, I don't think has a chance to contend for a title in the next year or two. If KD wants to go play in Miami to enjoy the weather and beaches, that'll be one thing, but he's made it explicitly clear that he wants to go out on his own terms playing for a winner.
Do you want your career to end in Phoenix?
Man, I want my career to end on my my turn. It's going to be a whole new era of your team when I get to your team. I'm still of value, you know what I'm saying?
Look, I understand why Miami would want Kevin Durant, especially after this disastrous season and drama with Jimmy Butler, but it just doesn't seem realistic on both ends. I also think Miami would be better off if they rebuilt through the draft and signed key free agents without giving up any assets in a trade. Another team that Shams didn't mention that I want to touch on are the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm kidding, that was a joke. Although after the Luka stuff, I don't know what's a joke or true. I personally think a trade to the Los Angeles Lakers could potentially be in the books for KD, but that's if the Lakers are willing to part ways with some of their young assets, like Dalton Knecht, Austin Reeves, and their 3 first-round picks, and I don't know if it's the most intelligent decision to trade all of those assets away for an aging star like Kevin Durant when you're already a top 4 team in the West. But what about a team that Kevin Durant started his career on? I mean, the Oklahoma City Thunder would be a cute story, right? I mean, check out this cool jersey swap I made of KD in a Thunder uniform. But for real, there's been a lot of buzz about a potential KD OKC reunion, and although it's unlikely, it's possible. There's a world where the OKC Thunder can't make a deep playoff run, and after the season pivot to Kevin Durant as an emergency option to make the team better for the postseason. While I do have a hard time envisioning the Thunder struggling in the playoffs, crazier things have happened in the past. Plus, it would finally help reconcile the city of OKC's beef with Kevin Durant. With all this information, I think it's clear where Kevin Durant's future is going to be. And if I had to pick a team to acquire KD, it would easily be the San Antonio Spurs. While I could definitely be wrong, this trade makes too much sense for both sides not to do. First, the Spurs have so many assets. It's almost like draft picks grow on trees down in San Antonio. Plus, they have a ton of young developing talent that they can attach in a trade and get the deal done. This would meet Phoenix's benchmark of multiple first-round picks and 1 player, but it would also allow Kevin Durant to spend his final years on a contending team where he doesn't have to lead the team offensively every possession. Yeah, KD would still be the best pure scorer on the team, but the soon-to-be 37-year-old could finally take a few possessions off and allow De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama to take over. This situation makes too much sense for both sides not to get a deal done, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, just maybe, Phoenix makes a decision that will shock the world.
Had a discussion. There was some miscommunication in an offensive set. The communication on this team has really been a common thread. How much do they need from the player?
Here we can see Kevin Durant getting into a little altercation with his 3rd head coach in 3 years, Mike Budenholzer. And I think it's fair to say the situation in Phoenix has completely boiled over. But is there a way to fix this situation? Is there a world that KD stays in Phoenix and runs it back with Devin Booker until at least next year's trade deadline? Let me be blunt, absolutely not. There's no way that happens. Unless the Suns fire Coach Bud and hire a 4th head coach in 4 years, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker's playstyles completely change, and the NBA magically expands their cap space, this simply won't work out for Phoenix. I wish I could sit here and draw out a plan for the Suns to keep KD, but honestly, it's not possible at this point, mainly because the product they're putting on the court is abysmal. When KD is healthy, this team can put up points, but defensively, they've been terrible. They rank 27th in team defensive rating, only below teams like the Utah Jazz and Washington Wizards. If you're competing with those teams in any stats, that's typically not a good sign.
How would you describe them right now?
A disaster. A team that has quit on their coach.
Now, wherever KD does end up going, it's going to be interesting to see what will happen. I think wherever he ends up going, KD needs to trust the front office because allowing Durant to have control over the personnel hasn't worked out well in the past. His big 3 didn't work out in Brooklyn. His big 3 didn't work out in Phoenix. How about we just keep KD out of roster construction conversations? Look, I respect Kevin Durant. He is undeniably one of the best pure scorers in NBA history, and he could have been a top 5 basketball player of all time, but his career mismanagement is what got him into this position in the first place. It would be a shame if the end of his career is remembered as a time where he hopped from Brooklyn to Phoenix to whatever his next destination is without competing for a title. Since playing for Brooklyn and Phoenix, Durant has only made the playoffs a handful of times and hasn't been able to advance any further than the 2nd round. I don't know about you, but that's just not how I want a player like Kevin Durant.
I mean, to be honest, he has a point. KD has so much potential. I think that with the way things in Phoenix are ending up, he needs to just leave Phoenix, go somewhere else, get a fresh scenery. Hopefully it's somewhere we could actually compete to actually win a title. I don't know if I can see him going to the Spurs, but honestly, I wouldn't mind that. That's Wemby, that's Fox, and then you got KD. Yeah, that would actually be a fire lineup. But yeah, I don't know, man. How you guys feel? Make sure you drop down in the comments. Beat up that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you guys for popping up. Make sure you check out the other videos on the channel too. We got Invincible, a lot of Star Wars content, a lot of solo leveling content. Appreciate you guys. I'm out.